So there's a new report out there, and it's suggesting a huge shift might be happening at the very top of Iran's leadership. A shift that could totally change the strategic map of the Middle East. Okay, let's dive into what this could all mean.
At the very heart of all this is a bombshell claim from a report by the Italian Institute for International Political Studies. It's alleging that just this past October, Iran's supreme leader himself, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, gave the go-ahead to develop compact nuclear warheads for their ballistic missiles.
For years, the official line from Iran has been all about restraint. So the big question is, why now? What could have possibly happened to completely change their strategic thinking? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down here.
Okay, first up, let's look at the core allegation of this report. A direct, top-down approval to actually build nuclear weapons.
You have to understand, if this is true, it's a complete 180. For a long time, the supreme leader had apparently blocked any real move toward weapons-grade uranium or making warheads you could actually deliver, even when he was getting a lot of pressure from Iran's powerful security groups.
So the really crucial thing to get here is that this wasn't just some bureaucratic shift. The report, which says it's citing insiders, claims the green light came directly from the man at the top, Ayatollah Khamenei. And it was specific: compact warheads made to fit on ballistic missiles. This came after years of him telling the Revolutionary Guards no.
So what could have been the trigger? Well, according to the analysts behind this report, the big turning point seems to have been the conflict with Israel back in June.
Now, this really lays out the before and after picture, and it shows a huge shift in their thinking. Before the war, Iran seemed confident that its massive arsenal of conventional missiles was enough to deter anyone. But that conflict apparently showed them just how vulnerable their air defenses were, and that those missiles might not be enough in a real, drawn-out fight. The conclusion they apparently drew from that was, well, it was profound. And this quote from the report is just stark. It really gets to the heart of how that conflict might have completely reshaped their thinking. The leadership reportedly came to believe that when you're up against nuclear-armed countries like Israel and the US, the only thing that can truly guarantee the regime's survival is a nuclear deterrent of their own.
But hold on, this doesn't mean they're openly just racing to build a bomb. The report makes it very clear they're taking a much more calculated, much more cautious approach.
As far as anyone knows, Iran is still keeping its uranium enrichment capped at 60%. Now that's way below the 90% purity you need for a weapon. And that's a really important distinction. They haven't crossed that final unmistakable red line. At least, not yet.
So the strategy seems to be this clever two-step process, all designed to minimize risk. Instead of just rushing to enrich uranium to 90%, which would set off alarm bells everywhere, they're reportedly focusing on the much harder, much more time-consuming part first, designing the warhead. This lets them build up their capability while still being able to deny what they're doing.
And to understand just how big of a technical challenge this is, the report brings up a great comparison. Pakistan. Think back to their program in the 90s. They were able to enrich uranium pretty fast, but it took them years of engineering and testing after that before they had a working, compact warhead they could actually stick on a missile.
Of course, right? A warhead is pretty useless if you can't get it to a target. And this is where we see that nuclear ambition linking up with some very real, very tangible progress in Iran's already powerful missile program.
For instance, Iran just recently tested a new ballistic missile, the Karmshar. And just look at these specs. It can carry conventional or nuclear warheads. It has a range of 2,500 kilometers and flies at a mind-blowing Mach 17. To put that in perspective, that's fast enough to hit Tel Aviv in less than 6 minutes. And according to Iran's own state news, it's so fast and maneuverable that it's impossible to shoot down.
And it's not just about the new hardware. To add to all the tension, the Revolutionary Guards just announced massive military drills near the capital, Tehran. Sure, they're calling them routine, but exercises with ground troops and combat scenarios, that sends a very clear message about their readiness.
So when you put all of these pieces together, you get a picture of a country that is seriously rethinking its entire strategy. And that leads to some major questions and, frankly, some pretty scary implications for the whole region.
You know, one of the biggest uncertainties is simply what we don't know. The reality is, only about 70% of Iran's nuclear facilities are actually known and monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. That leaves a huge 30% gap. And it raises some really serious worries that secret enrichment could be happening at covert sites, completely off the grid.
And then there's the other big wild card. Could they be getting help?
The report mentions these persistent rumors inside the Revolutionary Guards about working with North Korea, especially on getting their hands on already tested warhead designs. Now, it's unverified, but if it's true, any kind of outside help could dramatically speed up their timeline.
Officially, Iran insists its program is peaceful. But all these developments, the supposed green light from the supreme leader, the shock of a recent war, the quiet focus on warhead design, and the major leaps in their missile tech, they all point to a nation moving very carefully but very deliberately toward a new kind of power. And that leaves us with the critical question: are we watching a quiet, calculated nuclear breakout happen right in front of us?